Hey guys, welcome to another weekly focus. I hope you had a great week and I hope you had some great trades as well. So I'm going to show you guys the trades I had for this week and I'll show you guys the opportunities we have for next week. So let's do a quick trade recap and look at the trades I had for this week. Perfect. All right guys, so I had this sell position. I think I spoke about this already. So we had this initial move. It was an impulsive move from the downside, and we had price consolidating. So you just had these difficulties for price to move to the upside, and you could see this area taken out, inability to make new highs properly. This area taken out, inabilities to make new highs properly. This area taken out, inabilities to make new highs properly. So I was looking for sells coming into this area right here. So if you look at the aftermath of this, I had my stops move to break even, and we had lots of consolidation around this area, and all of this consolidation just gave me more confidence with this position. Like, it just told me like, all right, cool, there's that difficulties for price to move to the upside, so it's most likely going to drop again to the downside. So I was still sat in this position, and I spoke about this last week because here's a trade I held from last week coming into this week. So I spoke about this consolidation around the entry point, inabilities for prices to move again to like my stop loss or to move higher. So I was still expecting the drop to the downside, and when you look at it, I closed the trade eventually as price got to this area right here. So that was a good position right there. It wasn't really complicated. The only difficulties with this was just the consolidation within this area, because normally if you time it properly, it's supposed to drop once you get the entry thing. And again, it's just how the market says. So sometimes I think I have the good entry thing or like a perfect entry, and then price tends to stall a little bit before moving, and it just tells you, all right, you didn't get the timing correctly. But again, you can only trade what you see sometimes, and then you learn from this from these positions, and then you just get better over time as well. So that was a sell position thing, and after the sells I went in for a buy. So we came off of this impulse move right here. We had this consolidation thing, so you could see the consolidation. Then we had a sell to the downside, and after the sells, started looking at this. We had massive sales, consolidation, inability for prices to move to the downside. So I was looking for buys again to take prices from an area like this back to this highs. So that was my whole thought process, because when you look at this, I'll show you guys, it's like an impulse correction and for us to move again to the upside. So that was my entry right there for the buys, and unfortunately it took me out for a loss. So I had an initial loss with those buy, like with the initial buy attempt thing. So I did take another position again. I'll show you guys right here. So here's another buy position. So I'm looking at this as an impulse, and I'm looking at everything coming to the downside as a consolidation. When we do the market focus thing, and I'll go a little bit deeper with this one, and I'll show you guys why I had an entry around this area and what I'm expecting with this trade. Now it's very easy. So first, I want to see prices coming back to this highs, and I'm looking for a break even around an area like this. So that's my thought process right now. I'm looking for the buys off of this impulse correction, and I'm expecting prices to take out the recent highs. So that's on like the 2-hour time frame, but we'll do the market focus thing and I'll show you guys what I'm really looking at like properly. All right guys, so that's it for the trade recap. Let's look at the DXY and look at gold in detail. All right guys, so let's start with the weekly time frame on the DXY. So here's a very interesting one again. And it just gets funny, like when you start looking at these prices week in, week out. And for some reason, when price is stuck at a certain area, you have lots of thoughts, like your analysis gets a little bit too crowded or too noisy for me. And let's look at this, like the bigger picture thing. Where is price at? Where is price most likely going to gravitate to or go to? And we'll look at the psychological levels. We'll look at trend lines. So same piece of price action. If you zoom out, you've seen the entire picture already, and we're not really focused on this entire picture right now because for some reason over some weeks now we've just been sat within an area like this. So we need to digest this piece of price action before making further decisions again. So let's look at this piece right here. What are we coming off of? So you had this impulsive move, you had a movement thing to the upside, and you had a pullback initial pullback, you had buyers reacting in a belief of buyers to go through 110, and this right here is a psychological level. We had sellers taking over, we had price coming to the downside, making new. So within this entire swing move, we had another low that was created, and once we created this low, I was looking at this differently. So at this point, I had an impulsive move. I had this channel formation right here, and once you have the channel formation, personally, I'm looking for buys again to the upside. So when you combine this with this trend line right here, this area right here was a very sweet spot for me to look or to anticipate the DXY is going to move again to the upside. Now this is going to take time. So once you see price coming to, let's say, an area where you're paying attention to, it doesn't bounce off of that area. So sometimes it's going to stay around that area, do its manipulation thing, and then eventually it's going to take off. So that's what I'm looking at currently on the DXY. So if you zoom into this area of price action, and let's just zoom in and see like the recent price action thing, and we're coming off of this sales. So the recent price action is a movement to the downside. So we're creating lower lows and lower highs. So you can see this downtrend thing to the downside, and then we had a violation thing that came in around an area like this. So once we had the violation, now you might be sat there thinking, all right, cool, we just headed to the upside immediately, and that's still part of the manipulation thing. So we had a violation, but it doesn't mean price is just going to move to the upside impulsively, because if you look at this, we're coming off of the sales right here. It's been sales since the beginning of like this year. We've been selling all the way to the downside. So if price decides to move to the upside, it's not going to turn immediately. It's going to turn, pull back, test these areas, and just see if there's that difficulty from the buyers to from the sellers to take prices lower, then the buyers can kick in again. So those are the things I'm really looking at when it comes to this piece of price action right here. So we're playing off of this area, and we're still playing off of this sales coming to the downside. So here's on the weekly time frame. Now let's look at a couple of psychological levels. Where is price at in terms of psychological levels? So we're still trading below 100. So we have this psychological level of 100. The next psychological level close to that is 90. So if there's an inability for prices to move to the upside, then my anticipation is as we start trading to the downside, we headed to the next psychological level. Now, if we decide to move to the upside for some reason, the first area of concern for me, is this psychological level here of 100. So just based off of psychological levels, that's my analysis right there. That's my prediction. If we have to move to the upside, the first area I'm paying attention to is a psychological level of 100. So we're still on the weekly time frame. Now, if you guys remember, I spoke about this. So I'm always looking for the impulse, then the correction, and then another move again to the upside. So if we're doing the same thing with the sell move, because we're coming off of this sells. So if you haven't, let's say you have an impulsive sell, you have a violation, you still want to give the sellers an opportunity to test these lows. And once you have an inability for prices to move lower, then you can see the movement coming to the upside. So currently, when you look at what's happening on the DXY, we're coming off of this massive sell move. We had a violation. So looking at it today, I'm expecting prices to come back and test areas like this. So let's see if we can get a push to the downside, and then an inability for prices to move lower, then we could see the DXY moving again to the upside. So that's just my thought process right there. Now this is on the weekly time frame. If you look at this on the daily, and we start zooming in on the daily time frame, so we're coming off of this violation thing. You had this sellers coming in, you had a violation, impulse correction, impulse correction. Now if you put a trend line right here, so here's where it gets a little bit confusing. If you put a trend line right here, I'm just going to clean this and make this cleaner, by the way. So you put a trend line thing. So you have an impulse, you have a correction, you have an impulse, you have a correction. So normally at this point, the anticipation again is just to see prices moving to the upside. But at the same time, I'm looking at the bigger picture from the weekly time frame, and I'm trying to put all these principles together. We're still trading below 100. We're coming off of an impulsive sell. So we're coming off of this impulsive sells to the downside. We had a violation. So we need to see price correcting again to the downside and just trying to take out this lows. an inability for prices to take out this lows, then we can say, all right, cool, the buyers are probably coming back to take prices to the upside. So that's the thought process there. And when you look at this on the daily time frame, you step down to the 8-hour time frame, you're looking at this current pace of price action, and it looks like price is headed to the upside, which, yeah, you can look at it that way. But at the same time, I just want to bring in this bigger picture view, because if I'm just stuck with this pace of price action, impulse correction, then my analysis might be a little bit too biased, thinking, all right, price is just supposed to move to the upside. But if I have to look at the bigger picture thing, then there's this possibility for prices to come back, testing an area like this. So in a situation like this, we might even get a violation of this trend line, and we see price coming down again, which is something not everybody will be expecting at this time. And for us to see if there's a possibility to take out this lows or an inability, then you see buyers kicking in. So that's my thought process right there, and that's my analysis. I'm going to stick to it. So let's look at this on the 8-hour time frame, and trust me, as you move down to lower time frames, it looks like the pair is headed to the upside. So it's also very okay for you to look at it that way. So on the 8-hour time frame is the same thing. You have an impulse, you have a correction. Price took out this highs right here, giving us the next impulsive move, and we've had a correction coming to the downside. So if you put a trend line right here, you see the same thing: impulse, correction, pivot point, impulse, correction, pivot point. So normally you'll be expecting buyers to kick in from an area like this, taking prices to the upside. But if you just step to a higher time frame, let's say the weekly, for example, what are we coming off of? So we're coming off of this impulsive sales. We had a violation. So let's get a correction first and see if there's an inability for sellers to take out these lows. Once we confirm there's that inability for sellers to take out the lows, then we could now anticipate the buys again to the upside. So let's head back to a lower time frame. Let's look at something like the 4-hour time frame and just see what's happening. So price is currently at a very crucial point. So I'm looking at this on the 4-hour time frame, looking at this on the 8 hours on the daily, and this piece of price action, like there's a structure I'm paying attention to: impulse, correction, impulse, correction. So what happens at this area, it's going to determine everything coming into next week. Now, if I'm wrong with my analysis, which I'm like, let's say 50 to 60% of the times I don't get it correct. So if I'm wrong with this analysis, what's going to happen, then you could expect the DXY again to move to the upside. And that's going to be very easy, just going off of these principles of trend lines: impulse, correction, impulse, correction. If I'm wrong with my analysis, then this pair has to move to the upside. Now, if I'm correct with my analysis, we should get a violation of this trend line right here. So if I'm really correct, you've seen this correction thing right here, and we should see this inability and for prices to move to the upside. So that's if I'm wrong. Now, if I'm correct, we'll get a violation of this trend line. You get a violation of this trend line, and we'll see prices moving again to the downside, taking out those lows right there. So, or testing the lows, not probably taking out the lows, just testing these lows. And then we could see maybe the buyer stepping in again, taking prices to the upside. So that's my analysis right there on the DXY. I'm expecting sales to the downside coming into next week on the DXY. And that's a very tough one, because you're looking at this and price seems to be sat around this area, which looks like a pivot point thing. Impulse correction as well. So you get the pivot point, you're expecting this as a pivot point. So it looks a little bit like, come on, you're looking for sales off of this area, coming off of a trend line thing. That's because I'm looking at the bigger picture thing. And I said this already, I could be totally wrong, but that's okay. I can only go off of my principles and the way I look at prices. So that's my analysis right there on the DXY. Coming into next week, I'm expecting a violation of this trend line and for prices to move again lower. So we'll take it from there, and let's look at gold and see if there's any opportunities and how I'm going to manage the position I'm in already. All right, guys, let's look at gold. All right, guys, we're looking at gold. Let's start on the weekly time frame. So if you look at what's happening on the weekly time frame, you'll tell me, hey, go close the buy positions you have already, because I have a buy position on gold currently. But if you're looking at what's happening on the weekly time frame right now, it's like you're very crazy to be taking buys off of those areas. And again, I'm just going to tell you, I'm only trading based off of my principles, based off of my setups and the strategies I have. So if I see everything aligning properly, I just have to take it, because then it's just a probability game thing. Yeah. So you look at this on the weekly time frame. What is price doing? Where is price most likely going to gravitate to? So on the weekly time frame, it's an impulse correction, impulse correction, impulse massive correction. And lots of people have been talking about this consolidation thing. But if you're looking at this on the weekly time frame, we've been consolidating for a very long time. But trust me, within every consolidation thing, yeah, step to lower time frames and you see very clean trends to play with. You see clean trends to the upside, a clean trend to the downside, clean trend again to the upside. So within every consolidation, there's just like massive trends you can play with. And even the position we have from last week, the sell positions, it was like, if you look at it, yeah, let's see if I can bring that up right here. So if you look at the sell thing, so yes, we're starting the consolidation thing, but you get the entry and you get the drop. So you can still get like really good positions, and I don't believe in just looking at it as a consolidation and walking away. So let's say you're only trading gold and price is consolidating within an area like this. So what are you gonna do? So are you saying you just walk away because price is consolidating like this? We had a similar thing around an area like this. These consolidations are always there. All I can tell you is, if you look a little bit deeper, you'll probably see like the trends that's forming within the consolidations. You just have to study price action a little bit deeper. Now look at this piece right here. Massive consolidation. There's a consolidation at an area like this. So this pair is always going to consolidate, not just this pair. Most pairs are always going to consolidate, but you need to build a system in such a way that you can spot the consolidation, step down to lower time frames, and make sense of what's happening. All right, that's a lot of talking right there. So let's look at this on the weekly time frame. Yeah, we're still saying, all right, cool, price has gone through 3,000, this psychological level. The next area price is most likely going to gravitate to is the 4,000 level, but this is going to take time, especially with this consolidation thing right here. It's going to take so much time. So what we can do is like step into this consolidation, look into lower time frames and see if there's any impulse thing we can play with. Look for the correction and then look for buying opportunities, or look for reversals to trade the correction moves. All right, cool. So we have this impulse correction thing. So looking at this on the weekly time frame, as I told you guys, it's very easy to say my buy position, because I have a buy position running currently. You might say, all right, the weekly candle has closed, let's say, as a perfect sell candle. So you had an impulse from this one, bullish, you had bullish, and there was an open and a close, and now we've just like the entire week we had this sales coming in from the entire week thing, and now I'm looking for buying positions again. Looking at this on the weekly time frame, it's difficult to tell if that's even going to hold through, but then we need to move down to lower time frames and see the structure this is giving us. So on the daily time frame now, let's start on the daily time frame. So on the daily time frame, it doesn't look convincing, but I'll show you guys what we're looking at right now, or what I'm looking at. So you can see this impulsive move right here. We had an impulse to the upside and we've had price pulling back. So that's my impulse, and then there's a correction I'm trying to play out. I'm trying to take buys of. And again, if we're taking buys, I just want to see price taking out this highs. Very simple. Impulse correction, and for us to see prices moving to the upside. Now with this piece right here, with this impulse correction thing, if we can take out these highs, that's my initial target thing. I'm not going to hold this all the way to, let's say, areas like this, or areas like this, or even areas like this, because with the way price is moving right now, you need to be very careful, because at the same time I'm looking at the DXY, and there's just a lot that can happen on the DXY. So we could see a rejection, let's say an impulse correction, rejection at this point, and price starts moving to the upside. If you see this movement to the upside, then you know gold is gonna tank to the downside. So I'm a little bit very cautious with my positions on gold coming into next week. So the first thing, identify the impulse move. That's an impulse. The next thing, look for the correction. We've had a correction, and then the next thing is like a 3-move play thing: impulse, correction, impulse. Now I'm looking for the next impulsive move to take out this high. So here's a piece of price action we're playing with, this piece right here. Now there's a psychological level down, there's a psychological level up. I understand all those things, but currently this is what we're playing with. So if I clean this and we step down to the 8-hour time frame, that piece of price action. So on the 8-hour time frame, I had this area I was looking at. So we had this initial impulse thing, we had a push to the downside, we had another push to the upside, and for some reason, looking at this as a channel, I was expecting prices to take out this area, or at least test an area like this, but there was an inability for prices to move lower. So we had buyers stepping in at an area like this, giving us this impulsive move, followed through now with the correction thing. So that's it, impulse, correction, and I'm expecting prices to move again to the upside, taking out this piece right here. And I'll show you guys my entry. I think at the point where I took the trade, I'll show you guys what I was looking at, and I'll try to go a little bit deeper. I hope there's enough time to do that. So on the 8-hour time frame again, so this piece is what we're looking at. So here's my focus coming into next week. First thing, identify the impulse. The next thing, look for the correction, and after that, look for an area where price stops correcting, and you look for the buys again to the upside. So that's on the 8-hour time frame. Now let's step down to one time frame lower, so we can look at a 4-hour time frame. So here's my thought process on the 4-hour time frame. I spoke about this last week. We was coming off of that impulse, we had the correction, we had buyers trying to move to the upside. So there was an inability. So we had a correction coming back into this area, and we had, let's see, we had price coming back into this area. You see this inability right here, tapping, let's say, at this trend line thing, and that was the reason why we had those sales coming in. So it was just a break retest, we had the sales coming in. So after this sales, if I clean everything like this, and we're playing off of this impulse that had this difficulty to go through this area. So the build up to the impulse correction, it's, if you look at it like on lower time frames, it repeats itself over time. So impulse right there, correction, first move, buyer step in, inability, we had sellers coming in. But when you look at how this lows was taken out, it wasn't convincing enough. So I had a loss, so because let's see, I had an initial buy around an area like this, prices moved to the upside, inability took me out at the loss. Now looking at this on the 4-hour time frame, you won't see it properly, but let's step down to the hourly. Perfect. So let's look at this on the hourly time frame, and I'll show you guys what I was looking at. So we're coming off of this impulsive move right here. We had an impulse thing, and as price starts correcting, you see this correction coming in, buyers stepped in, inabilities to make new highs, sellers came in again, inabilities to make lows properly. So that was my reason right there. So once I saw this, I said, all right, cool, we could expect buys off of this structure. So it's an impulse, it's a correction, then within the correction you can see how price sold, inability to make proper lows right there. So you see the sales, inability to make proper sales, or new lows again to the downside. So we took out this piece right here. You can imagine the number of stop losses that was sat around an area like this, and I was one as well. So price took me out and took a lot of people out as well. So here's my initial attempt again on this pair. I'm gonna clean this just to make this look better. So we're coming off of this impulse thing, there's a correction, inability to make new lows again. So that's my entry right there. So once we had a pop out of this, so you can look at this as a counter trend move. I don't know why my analysis looks so crowded today. So you had this initial sell, you had another sell thing, inabilities to make new lows, price popped out, and once we had a correction thing right here, I had my sales off of this area. Now, you know, when you take the position thing, yeah, you know price is not playing out properly when it doesn't kick off immediately, or you know the timing wasn't correct when price doesn't kick off immediately. So with this position right here, I know my timing was off, like completely off. So you're looking at this move, we took out this area, we had a push to the upside, then came in the correction thing, and I had my entries right here. Now we're sat within this consolidation or the correction thing, and it's taken lots of hours already for price to just consolidate within this area. It just tells me my timing wasn't wasn't perfect. But my third process again is just to see prices taking out these highs right here, and once we get to an area like this, I want to have my stops move to break even at an area like this and see if we can ride this all the way to the upside, coming back to this area. So we're looking at an area like 3400. So if we can get back to these highs, then I'm going to close my trade right there. So I think it's like really straightforward. Impulse correction, impulse correction. Let's see, coming back from the daily time frame, I don't think there's any other thing I can point out on this. But if you're looking at this on the daily time frame and the weekly time frame and comparing this to what's happening on the DXY, if the DXY doesn't break out of this trend line, then my analysis is completely wrong and I'm going to take a loss on that. So the only thing that's holding that position thing right now is the decision that's going to take place when you look at the DXY at this point. So if the buyers step in right here, if the buyers can, sellers, if the sellers can take control of this piece and we see price moving to the downside, then it's going to give those buys on gold. And however, if the DXY decides to respect this area, that's a pivot point thing, and starts moving again to the upside, then I'm going to take a loss on this. So when you look at this on the daily time frame and you look at this on the weekly time frame, it's very scary looking for buys off of those areas because we're coming off of this bearish weekly candle. So it looks a little bit tricky right now, but once you step down to lower time frames, now you step down to the 4-hour time frame, you also have wicks on this side. So you're looking at all these wicks right here. So look at this, wick, wicks, 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 wicks. Just this inability as well for prices to make it move to the downside. So again, price is going to do what it really wants to do, and I can't stop it, I can't change it. But that's my analysis right there. I'm expecting prices to move to the upside on gold, and I'm expecting the DXY to sell. So coming into next week, I'll be a little bit patient, just wait and see what price has to do and the possible trade management thing I can do. But that's the analysis right there, guys. I don't want to bore you guys a lot, so that's it. And make sure you're consistent, make sure you're patient with your analysis, and above all, make sure you're praying. And if you take a loss, don't get pissed off, just go reanalyze. And every loss just gives you an opportunity to learn something new about price action. All right, guys, see you next week. Bye for now.